today with us to talk about the operating system of you. And Sean, so he's a developer advocate at AWS Amplify, and he wrote a book that I totally recommend. I started reading it, and it's pretty cool. So I totally recommend his book, The Coding Career Handbook. Is that
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, then Sean, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then the floor is yours. Yeah, just one last thing, guys, in the meetup, if you can share on Twitter that you're participating to the meetup or something, it would mean a lot to us, and it would give some visibility to our speaker and to us as well. So do not hesitate to share on Twitter or LinkedIn as well. Thank you, Sean. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Let me share my screen. And this is a meetup. It's not a conference talk. So something that we can do here that we cannot do it normally is that you can interrupt me. So if you can, if you have any follow ups, you want me to pause, ask questions. I'm happy to do that because the whole point is it's not for me to like lecture or anything. These are just things that I really think is important for all of us, and we should have a chat about it. I think it's I don't think we chat about this enough. All right, so I guess I will get started. Let me hopefully present properly. Um, and I can hear you if anyone says anything, or post stuff in the chat. I'm just going to check periodically. But yeah, this talk is called the operating system of you. Basically, it is one analogy that I have extended into an entire talk. But I think it's a really apt analogy, and I'll talk about why later on. But I want to motivate this talk and this conversation with a story, and it's a really cool story that I found of Jeff Dean and Sanjay Gemawat. Jeff Dean is the head of Google Brain. Sanjay is, I actually don't know what he does today, but the two of them are a very famous couple that were together responsible for some of the biggest things at Google, like BigQuery, Spanner, Google Translate, Bigtable, MapReduce, TensorFlow, Google Brain. There, Google has engineering ladder that goes from level 1 to level 10, to level 10 being the most senior. And most junior engineers come in at level 3, senior engineers will be like level 5, Google fellows are level 10. Jeff Dean and Sanjay are the only level 11s in the entire company of Google. And that's something that's interesting about the Googlers, is that they can see the contributions that Jeff and Sanjay make. And there's a very interesting comment that I found for this guy on Hacker News, who said, look at Jeff and Sanjay's commit history and code review dashboard. They actually are not that much productive in terms of code written than a decent software engineer 3, the junior engineer, who knows his code base. The reason they have reputation and rock stars is that they can apply this productivity to things that really matter. And I think that's something that we intuitively get. It's not about our lines of code. It's about how we apply our talents in some way. And that really struck with me, because that means that programmers are not all built the same. Not like, we may have the raw programming talent, but it takes a little bit more than that to be really effective and productive. It's something that I studied, and then I started studying, as part of my book, how to separate out the people who make software. And I had all of these roles kind of mapped out. And it just goes from machine all the way to end user, and what kind of thing you're trying to produce. So if you produce firmware, hardware, you work with hardware. Or if you produce cloud stuff, you work with distributed systems. If you create languages, you basically work on a runtime. If you create backend services, you write business logic. If you create front-end applications, you're really working a user experience. And at the end, if you're a no-code developer, CMS user, or designer, you're really creating content where you're configuring an application that someone else already made. So that's a really high level, like, if you never thought about this for the first time, it like suddenly makes sense now. And that's how I like to approach things. Like, there's all this disorganized stuff in the world. What will we do? What insights can we get if we organize them in a nice way? So for example, One insight from here that you can get is that there are fewer people working at the bottom of the funnel, but a lot more people at the top of the funnel because it's so much easier to work with. We need software to separate these things, and I think you can be more effective if you understand where you are. You can understand how and why the interview questions, like why do we train so much for algorithm questions? That's because we used to train developers at this level of abstraction, but if you're an application or content developer, you're actually at a higher level of abstraction. And I've never been asked like an algorithm interview apart from Google. There's also a wide, and I started thinking about like the wide variety of developers. So there's levels, there's where you are in the stack. There's also it's just like salary and what you do. So it's really interesting that like there are differences, and not all developer careers are made the same, and that's something I started to think about as well. You also started to think about the teams they work inside of, and this is pretty interesting. Like individual developers, you can. There's no such thing as like a 10x developer, but you do have more productive developers and less productive developers. So I want to talk about why these are the end results that are observable. We need to really dig into the internal systems that help these people produce the end results. So for those who don't know me, I'm Sean. I used to be in finance. I went through a boot camp in 2017. Did a startup that was that I don't talk about after that, and then went into Netlify for a couple years, and just joined AWS this year. I do teach React and TypeScript on Egghead.io, and we can talk about that as well. I maintain the React in TypeScript cheat sheets. I was a React JS moderator for a long time, so there's like over 200,000 of us on Reddit. And I also helped to organize Svelte Society, which is like a global series of meetups and 2 conferences. And we have a conference next year. And I'm quite known for this Learn in Public essay that I wrote. So so when I think at the start of this meetup, we already talked about the book, so I don't need to talk too much about it. But basically, I separated my thoughts on career stuff, or like I researched a bunch of people and looked at their career advice, and then I compiled it down to 3 levels, like principles, strategies, and tactics. And really, like, ultimately, I think the main thing that people need in order to implement all of this is they need habits, because at the end of the day, we care about outcomes, and your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. Like if you read the best book in the world, I don't care what book you read, it doesn't matter unless you can make it stick, right? And you have to know how to convert this into something that you actually can use. So I really like this book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. This is one of his mantras, that you get what you repeat. So it's this idea that we can talk about high level skills and strategy all we want, but at the end of the day, that is super helpful. At the end of the day, if we don't have control of our own habits, then we don't really get to that advanced state of things. We need to take care of our own personal systems. And he draws this picture where he says like really habits are more important than everything else, because if we focus on compound growth, we have really nice sustaining and compounding growth. Whereas if we focus on tactics and sprint up and down all the time, we only get so far. And I think that's fundamentally true of my own personal growth. I'll try something for a while. It'll be a little bit successful, and then I'll stop, and then I'll go back to normal again. What I really need is habits that help to level me up in a consistent fashion. So those are really powerful things as well. And the converse, we're talking about good habits here, but also the cessation of bad habits is equally important. So this is kind of how I rank it in terms of like, you think about the developer career ladder, the developer stack, the software career layers stack. There's a similar thing here where there's you, which is the hardware at the bottom, like your physical body, the assets that you've been given with your body and your brain. And then there's what other people see of you, right? They see the human, they see the career, they see the job. You might need tactics for the job, strategies for the career, and principles for the human. But at the end of the day, there's still this like layer, like a operation layer between how you that all those is how you apply yourself to other people. but here is how you serve yourself, and how we look after ourselves. And I think that's the domain of habits is my conclusion of that. And I kind of call this, in the analogy, operating systems versus applications. Like that's the difference. Like you need a good OS to run all these applications on, and you can tell when the OS is slowing down your applications, right? Like you can get the best applications in the world, but if you have a crappy OS, then it doesn't matter. So we really need to work on our OS just as much as we work on our applications. So if I'm going to take this analogy, I really had to start studying what an OS is. It's kind of composed into a few of these spaces, but I'm really going to focus on this part, the bottom bit, right? It basically, at its core, OS is a kernel, but it interfaces with memory, disk drive, network interface, and CPU, and a bunch of other things. So we can take that analogy and kind of run with it. So the first part I'm going to talk about is firmware. And so what is the firmware for our habits of our developer habits? And that's really sleep, ergonomics, eating, and exercise, as far as I can summarize this whole part. So sleep, pretty, don't take my word for it. Take the word of Bill Gates. He's actually blogging these days. So if you go gatesnotes.com/book/why we sleep, he actually reviews this book, and he talks about how he wasn't sleeping very much during the Microsoft years, and he really regrets that now because he sees that it was not necessary. And there's a real science behind it. So I guess all I'm saying is sleep more, have a good, try to aim for deep sleep. The basic things to do. I think we just forget the importance every now and then. So I try to serve as a reminder. Ergonomics, sit up straight. Most of you are probably hunched over like I was. And I like this image because it really tells you without any words the kind of things you should be looking for. Like your head should be have a vertically level with the top of your monitor. Your arms should be extended like this and not kind of bent, scrunched up. And your feet should be comfortably kind of stretched out like that and not kind of curved in, because that will also cause the curve in your back over here. So those are interesting. So it really kind of means that you need a good chair that's adjustable and a monitor with the height. So I try not to use laptop keyboards or monitors because those are very not ergonomic. Like when people make laptops, they optimize for portability, and nobody's going anywhere these days, and we should spend a bit of extra money to extend the portability by using a keyboard, mouse, monitor, because those are much more ergonomic. And if that was too much, use this 4-step checklist. Is your screen arm length away from you, top of your screen, elbow 90 degrees, and feet on the ground. So that's a very good 4-step checklist. If you got that and your back is still straight, you're doing well. I personally had issues with my wrists because we type a lot. We have Scott Hanselman always says, like, we have a limited number of keystrokes in our hands, and we need to make sure that we're not hurting our hands, because we were never evolved to do this. Particularly the keyboard combinations, Control C, Control S, Control V. Because I'm a gamer, we are trained to do that because that's the shortcut, because the other hand is on the mouse. But apparently the right way to do it is right hand Control, left hand CSV. So it's a really deep topic, and this is just the basic stuff. If you want to go really advanced, you can buy the more special ergonomic keyboards. I actually have the Microsoft Sculpt. You can set a reminder to do stretching for your hands. Sometimes you can wear a wrist brace as well. So let me show you an example of the wrist brace down here, and that helps you settle out. Or you can switch your keyboard layout from QWERTY to Dvorak. A lot of people, I think, might be familiar with the origin of the QWERTY keyboard layout, which is intentionally to slow you down, because that would make the typewriter stick less. But obviously that has no implication on how we do things today. This is from a friend and a close reader, Trey Tuna, who actually has his keyboard suspended, so he types in a more natural position like that. And I'm thinking of investing in this vertical keyboard because I really like this idea that you're not pronating your hands, you're actually vertical. Sorry, but I like this idea. Talent is voice coding. So sometimes you just don't want to use your hands, and that's totally fine as well. And I've seen some demos of it. It's really impressive. I haven't tried it out yet. So that's why I separated it into advanced RSI for when you really, really need help, and basic RSI, which is like preventative. Like you should do this now, and it's cheap, versus and so that you hopefully don't need this later. Okay, exercise and eating. Most developers do not exercise. And part of why I love doing this talk is because it reminds me of the benefits of exercising. And I do actually pay for a trainer to go 3 to 4 times a week. And yeah, you know how it's important. I don't need to tell you. We sit a lot of the day. Here are all the problems with sitting. Okay, I don't need to read them out. Stand up more, move more. Let's just take care of our bodies as a basic firmware kind of thing. Particularly air squats, we can do in a constrained space with no equipment. I really like that. Normally, I would actually pause and do an air squat in front of you just to do them together. But I don't think we have time, so I'm just gonna skip ahead. But yeah, do them if you got a free time. It seems silly, but nobody's judging you, and your body needs to take a break from sitting all the time. Eating. We know this is what I was brought up with a lot of carbs. Unfortunately, I'm still paying for that today because I'm still addicted to carbs. Then we moved to keto, where or like the low carb diet. And now, and that's a direct opposite of the pizza diet, which most meetups, if BeJS was still meeting up, I'm sure you have pizza. That's the American style, and I really hate it. Every meetup has pizza, and it's super unhealthy, and the healthy stuff is all the way at the bottom. That is not what we want to do, and we want to go closer to here. So yeah, just a reminder. And yeah, so this is the key quote from Scott Hanselman, who's a huge figure in the C# Microsoft community. Take care of yourself. This job can destroy your hands, back, and shoulders. Walk, talk, stand, squat, whatever. Your hands and back and brain are your money. Treat them right now, and they'll last you 30 to 50 years. And that's something that I think you should care about. It's your body. No job description is going to go like, hey, you should work out more, or you should eat less, you should eat right, or you should take care of your hands. But this is something that you need to take care of for yourself. There's a chat. Let me just quickly check this. Rashid Tarsimi says, keto rocks, 1 year full keto for me. That's awesome. You should do a talk about it because I want to know how to go more keto. One difficulty is I'm living with my parents and they eat a lot of Asian food, so we are definitely not keto. I'm just eating less and working out more, and that's fine for me. So people got to find what their bar is. And thanks for the comment, because it's really helpful to make this a live session, because I think that's what makes this worthwhile. Okay, that was the firmware bit, right? Taking care of your hardware. Then there's the external devices, taking care of all the stuff outside of you. So under here, I have storage, networking, environment, and virtualization. So let's go a little bit into that. So like a typical CPU, a typical processing unit, processing that is CPU. But like a CPU has cache, there's physical memory, there's flash drive, and then there's this slower drives. And so there's this idea of like different levels of memory. And so we have the human equivalent is that we have a working memory, and then a longer lived memory, like long-term, mental memory, and then the stuff that is outside of us basically forms our long-term storage. And it's true in humans. We basically have this kind of architecture of memory. About 20 minutes from now, you're going to forget 40% of everything I just said. About 1 day from now, you're going to forget 2/3 of what I said. And, if I'm lucky, a month from now, you remember 20%. The only way that we know of to defeat this is to do spaced repetition, right? To continually refresh notes or rewatch talks. So if you come across, I'm not saying this talk, I'm just saying, like, if you come across something that you found really insightful, just remember that there is a forgetting curve, and we humans are not very good at storing things. So one way is to keep it alive inside of our living memory. Obviously, the other way is to write things down. I have my longest chapter in my book is about the benefits and how to get started writing. It scales really well. It's searchable. It's stored forever as your second brain. If you really value your brain, why not have two? and it seems pretty obvious to me. It also forces you to structure your thoughts, and people generally find that people who write are clearer thinkers and clearer speakers as well because they've thought things through beforehand. So I kind of call it like a defragmenting process for your brain. It also keeps you honest because you can't, once you write something down in the past and then you come back to it like a year, 2 year, 3 years from now, your memory cannot play tricks of yourself. It's, you wrote it down there at the given timestamp. So it really keeps you honest in terms of decision making, as well as just like remembering the sequence of events. Power is, it's really powerful because I like to write before I code. Like you should write a design doc before you code because you that's the cheapest form of exploring ideas and getting feedback. It's also permissionless. You don't need anyone's permission to write. Just write something and then send it out. So I really like all these approaches. Okay, that was the storage bit. Now we're on to networking. Well, I think a lot of us are familiar with the idea of Metcalfe's law, which is the value of a network scales as a square. And this is on squared of the number of nodes inside of the network. And I think that's something that as you get more senior, the value of your developer network increases. When you start out in this industry or this career, you're a node of one. Then you make friends, then you're a node of a few, and then the people that you work with and the close friends that you have through open source and community start to hire you, start to work with you, whatever. You start to become partially hired for your network, and that's a very powerful thing, and your value increases as the square of your network. So that's an interesting way, and particularly if you can connect yourself with high-powered individuals. People always ask me how to do networking. I this is the way that I put it. You don't sign people up for mentorship programs. You don't go to someone that you respect and go like, can you be my mentor for life? That is an unpaid job with no job description. That's a shitty deal. Don't do that. Instead, try to do project-based partnerships. Like if your mentor is putting out something new, go try it out. If it's a new library, new demo, new talk, new course, just try it out, take notes, do something with it, pick up what they put down. And really once you really start to do that and give them feedback, because nobody else does it. This is a super undervalued skill. It's almost like a hack because that they're required to respond to you because that's the social contract of being a creator. If they start to work with you enough, and if you make good points, you make good summaries, then they start to see you as a collaborator and a peer and eventually a friend. And I think that's, to me, the much more organic way of doing these things, because then you're working with something that they are interested in, that you are also interested in learning. That is a nice form of mentorship that I really like. And it's not open-ended, right? Like if you work together on something and it ends, then you can go your separate ways, and that's fine. So I think this is a very nice thing, and I've enjoyed it every time we've done it. Okay, so then there's also this idea of marketing yourself. So once you've done something interesting with your life, you build up some skills, you should be able to market yourself. Most developers agree that marketing yourself is very important. They just don't know how to do it, or they don't feel like it's icky. It's not part of their job description, so they don't do it. That is only hurting you. So people who can market themselves better are doing better than you, even though they may not be as good a coder. So I have a whole essay on this. I don't have time to talk about it, but ideally, just make sure do an inventory of what you have, like your personal brand. You pick a domain, and as well as your business value and your tech skills, and then make sure you market yourself at work and in public as well. And we can talk about that in the Q&A as well. So I'm gonna pause for questions. It looks like I have a few questions. So Nico says, got a dog 2 months ago, forcing me daily to go on a walk. Yes, I really want a dog. My family doesn't allow that right now, but when I'm living on my own again, I'm gonna get a dog because yeah, they're great for walks. Stin says, I don't need to write this down or remember it. Yeah, I mean, try to write notes for everything, because there's no point consuming more things and then not remembering any of it. It just comes in one end and goes out the other end. It's almost like you might as well not consume anything. So really, the goal of reading, listening to podcasts, watching talks, is to take away one thing, a few things, that you can refer to in the future or that you can apply to yourself, and the rest is just for entertainment. But like um, consume in order to do something, not consume just for the sake of consuming. Okay, Eamon says, journaling helps me a lot. It gives me the clarity I need and helps me plan my next moves. It's also super nice for evaluating how you're doing and checking if you've good, respecting your good habits. Yes. Yeah, so I like journaling a lot as well. Okay, so let's talk about environment. So that's the third part of this sort of things outside of us. So uh, the typical wisdom and the research that I've accumulated shows that you should try and separate your workplace from your bedroom, which is pretty important, especially if we're all working remotely. The room temperature is important. How often you're interrupted. Like I've seen some people like Wes Boss, who teaches, he's the JavaScript guy instructor. He actually puts a red light outside of his door, so his kids know that when the red light is on, he's recording and he should not be interrupted. Vertical monitors. This one comes from Andre Staltz, who actually asserts that turning your monitors vertical can make you more productive. Try it out. I don't know. More oxygen levels. Sometimes Brain.fm and FreeCodeCamp radio are just like good, non-disruptive music that make you more productivity. So I think those are interesting. There's a debate as to whether or not you should have your closed and open doors if you're in an office, because closed door gives you more focus, but open door gives you more serendipity. I think the solution is that you should have sometimes that you're closed and sometimes that you're open, and just be conscious of where you had that. So yeah, I've accumulated a bunch of research here, but this is a very high level overview, so we can keep skimming. Just ask questions, and if you have them, it'll come back. The final part of this external environment is this idea of virtualization, which is like a machine emulating another machine, right? We have this concept in code, but humans are really good at that, and developers basically, we call it empathy, right? Can you empathize with other users? When I was working at Netlify, we actually had this system of like giving feedback, and instead of saying nits and giving comments, we actually have like classifications of comments and helping other people empathize with us on what our feedback is. One of the ways in which I really enjoy doing that is to preemptively review my own code. So I make the PR, and without waiting for my reviewer to give any comments, I would go through my own PR and anticipate what my reviewer is going to say. So it saves one round trip of like back and forth. So my PRs are going to get merged faster, and it also shows that my reviewer that I understand their concerns because I work with them. And it makes them feel appreciated. It makes them go like, okay, yeah, this person really thinks about me. And so I trust this person more because they're thinking about the concerns that I would bring up. So it's a really, really good hack. And the way that you can virtualize other people is to just understand their points of view better, even though if you disagree with them, just understand them. Okay, so that's part one and part two, firmware and external devices. I'm gonna check for questions. No questions. Okay, so I'm gonna then we have two more parts, and then we're done. So the part three is I'm really passionate about. It's a scheduler. So this is a key habit that helps you get shit done for everything else, right? Do you have a good scheduler? So what is a scheduler in terms of the code, the operating system's point of view? It's people call it the. Hang on, I have a question here. Question. Eamon says React scheduler. React is an operating system. That was my first talk. Yeah, there are many kinds of schedulers, and every time you write an operating system, you basically end up writing a scheduler. And so humans should have a scheduler as well. Like we are no exception. So we need this like single source of truth that puts things in queue, pops it off the queue, works on them, does IO, does child processes, puts everything back in the queue, and just goes on an infinite loop for forever and ever and ever. But the main idea that I find from operating systems research is that you should try to have a single source of truth, because getting multiple sources of truth makes it very hard to debug. Although it's not impossible. So actually, so the main questions that you should ask about your own personal human scheduler is: are you dropping tasks? That's the baseline. Like, do not drop things that you're not supposed to drop, because if you do, then you have a real problem. Do you prioritize low priority tasks over high priority tasks? This one everyone does, right? Like we tend to the unimportant things that are easy to do versus high priority things that are hard. And those that's a question that you really need to keep fixing. Like, and there are ways to address that, and we can talk about it. Are you bad at task switching? So like when you need to do one thing and then switch over, how much downtime do you have in between tasks? And then when you're working on a task that is clearly not working out, are you bad at stopping your loss and just saying, all right, this is enough. I gotta stop. I gotta quit. Can you quit? Do you know when to quit? So those are interesting issues to ask your of your scheduler. There are a few prioritization mechanisms that people use. Obviously, at work you might use one form, but I think for your personal life you should also have some form of idea of how to prioritize. You basically want to maximize your throughput, the amount of work you can do, the amount of utilization, the amount of like system resources that you have, because you only have so much. You want to minimize task turnaround time. You want to minimize waiting time for each task, so they don't run into expiry. You want to minimize your response time to other people. So there's a few scheduling algorithms. There's priority scheduling, shortest job first, round robin scheduling. These are all algorithms, but they can be algorithms that you live by, and because they're just abstract scheduling algorithms that you can apply for your own personal inbound priorities that are coming in, and a much simpler version of this for humans, because humans can only handle so much complexity, is the 2x2 Eisenhower decision matrix. We typically tend to do the urgent things first. So urgent and important, of course we do it. It's like, oh, like my homework is due tomorrow. I'm going to do my homework now. We also do the urgent and not important. Like, oh, there's a notification bell. Let me go check what my Twitter mentions say. But there's a difference between important and not important, right? Like one thing is more important than the other. We tend to not do the not urgent and important. So if it's important but it's not due right just yet, we typically procrastinate, and that's how it becomes urgent when it gets up to the last leg. So if you read the book on getting things done, which we'll talk about later, it's this whole art of scheduling this so you never arrive here, because this stops everything else in your system, and then trying to find ways to do things, not to do things which are not important. Especially if it's not urgent, not important, then you're really just wasting your life, which is fine. Just try not to do so much of it. And yeah, that's the GTD book. That is the Bible for everyone who does these things. So if you're interested in that, definitely pick up on it. I'm going to check if anyone has comments on this approach, because GTD is a very detailed approach. You don't need to adopt every single recommendation, but just this idea that you should have a prioritization system is an important insight, because nobody taught you this when you became an adult. You just like look around and go like, how come some people have their shit together, some others don't? And then you learn. You eventually learn that these are the systems, the operating systems that people have. Okay, I have a chat request here. Eamon says, planning via calendar instead of a to-do list has helped me a lot. Yeah. A calendar is what you actually do. A to-do list is what you want to do. So a calendar, it spends the one currency that you have, which is time, whereas to-do list has an infinite shelf space. All right. So let's talk and finally talk about batching. This is something I learned from my ex-boss, Sarah Drasner. She actually batches her work. So she tries to put all the meetings together. So she wrote this article in CSS Tricks. You can look up. It's a really boss title, csstricks.com/prioritizing. Wow. That's amazing. Anyway, so for her, she wants to batch all meetings together. And then she also does intra-week batching. So Mondays, more meetings. Thursdays in IC day. So Thursday she would have uninterrupted time just coding, and then Fridays a bit more meetings. But I've seen this in action, and she's really effective. And I think if you ask all the high performing developers that you'll find tricks that these people have as well. So I would encourage you to do that. Ask people that you look up to and just say like, what was your productivity system? And they'll tell you things like this, and they actually do it. So, and then it's down to you to actually do it. It's really not simple, not harder than that. Okay, so there's firmware, the external devices. This is scheduler, but I think above all of this, which is like I keep saying it, more important. Above all of this is the kernel of the operating system, which I call the drive. So it's kind of like the ghost in the machine of the OS. It's the one process that drives all the other processes. If you're familiar with kernel hacking, This is the idea of a like a PID equals zero, like the process that initiates all the other processes that are being run. So a lot of people have different terms for the equivalent of humans. It's called purpose, it's called vision, mission, calling, intrinsic motivation. I like the word drive, basically because when I see these stories, a lot of people like they slacking off at Google for 6 years. They feel super unmotivated. That's when their career is over because they just lost interest in coding. They're so burned out that they have to write a gist to ask for help because they don't know what to do. They work so hard to get this job, to get these skills, and then once they got there, they apply themselves so much, and then they burned out. And that's when you stop coding. So it's game over at that point. And I really want people to be aware that this is a real thing that people run into, and you have to manage it. You have to manage your own emotional health. For Daniel Vassallo, he wrote about his own experience working at the company that I work at right now, where he kept getting promoted, getting more compensation, even the super high level that would be amazing to most people. And he didn't feel anything. And basically because these are all extrinsic motivation measures, and really the thing that you care about is intrinsic motivation. So that's the title of his blog post, and I encourage you to read that as well. Your motivation gets destroyed as your external motivation comes up. And that's the topic of the book Drive, which I really love, because it's this paragraph really encapsulates it. Like, why do adults, me as an adult, right? Like, I actually feel, and this is an honest confession, I don't feel like I want to learn a language unless I can get paid for it. It's just a fact, right? And that's such a different thing from when we used to be children. When we were children, we had inner drive. We had inner drive to learn and discover and help others. But when we grow, we're being driven by our society to only respect extrinsic motivations. Like, we need some reward to do things. So we lose more and more of our intrinsic motivation, and the extrinsic reward system that the world has set up for us destroys all our internal drive. So that's a really good insight, and to me that means that we need to find a way to keep our own internal drives around, to respect our own internal motivation, and to find jobs and means of making a living that align with things that we fundamentally want to do, because look at all these people, like they're making good money at whatever they're doing, but they're completely not internally motivated because they lost their drive. There are some other philosophies which I'm going to briefly cover. There's this concept of ikigai, which is you should be doing the combination of what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what it can be paid for. I have in my book, I actually condensed that into 2 circles because I think this is not necessary anymore. Wait But Why, Randall Munroe. Actually, no, Tim Urban. Tim Urban has this like octopus that he does, the octopus with only 5 legs. And these are all the things that motivate people. This is his mental model. You can go check that out as well. But basically that's the whole summary. Like, I think that this is the full picture of what an operating system, of a complete operating system of a developer is. And notice that I didn't say anything about like learning in public. I didn't say anything about like speaking at a conference or like code architecture or like mentoring others. This is all about you. This is the operating system of you, and upgrading upgrading the process by which you run your life and absorb things that come into your life, and be it tasks or the environment around you, or the system of your motivation. I think one activity check, like in any operating system, we have this kind of activity monitor thing that just shows like, all right, it's self-consumption and all that. So what is the equivalent of our activity monitor? It's basically emotions. These are kind of like the code smells, or like the system warnings that that might pop up, and it may not feel rational, but I think we need to normalize talking about how we feel, especially if you're a guy. You may not be so comfortable doing that, but it's okay to ask for help. Understand that everyone has insecurities, and I think this point is not emphasized enough by me. A lot of developers, when you ask like what is the most important skill that a developer should have, they say learning how to learn, right? Learn how to learn and you'll be set for life. That's really great. The only problem is that you can never learn everything in the world, and at some point you're going to have to learn how to be happy instead of learning how to learn, because that's the only point at which you'll be happy. It's to finally say like, okay, I will never have, this learning how to learn mentality is very much like, I will never have enough. Whereas learning how to be happy is learning how to be happy with what you have. And to forgive yourself for making mistakes in the past. People really beat themselves up, including myself. So so in this category, my advice is that good enough is better than best. A lot of newbie developers, when they come in, they're like, I want the best framework, the best cloud, the best team, the best job. You obsess over benchmarks. You care what influencers think, and you have to keep out new releases. This is a non-stop treadmill. Because you keep looking for the best, you have to do this. And you're focusing on what other people think, what other people benchmark, other people release. Instead, you turn it around and you go, what is good enough for me? So you focus on yourself. What do I need to do? What do I know well existing? What existing technologies do I already have? And what do I enjoy? And so I think that's a much more healthy approach to dealing with all the technology that comes in our lives. So yeah, and I think finally, the last slide. The emotional journey of creating anything great includes a lot of downs, and includes a big high. And you're basically creating a great career for yourself. You only have one shot at this, right? And you're going to go through some dark days. But I think if you have companionship and you don't take yourself too seriously, and you persist through that, remember that you're building towards something really great in the end of the day. And it's an emotional journey. So just be prepared for it. Be comfortable when you're going through the swamp. You'll come out okay, because other people do as well. Yeah, so that's my brief pitch on the operating system review. Hopefully that did not take too long, and then I can take questions. I have this and more on my book site, and I'm going to drop a link to a discount for people who haven't got it yet. But thank you. Oh, and also remember to do spaced repetition on anything that you particularly enjoyed. So this is a good shout out. Okay, questions? Questions. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna drop a link to the book here with a 30% discount for anyone who has questions. But otherwise, yeah, Amre says, how do you journal? Do you follow a specific method? I just have a Notion doc that I clone, and then I'll just write in whatever I was working on that day. For me, it has to be very lightweight. Otherwise, I never do it. It has to be so easy and free form that I can write down whatever I'm thinking, whatever I did that day that was significant. And I try to resist the too much process, because too much process gets me stuck. So Frederick, I hope that answers your question as well. All right, I'm going to pause my own recording.